Were you a good student?
I think so, yeah. I was
You
not
were.
as good as my sister, but I was pretty good at
Were
it.
you a good student, Winston?
I was way too dyslexic to be good at school.
You were dyslexic.
Yeah.
What about you, Anthony? Good student?
I learned how to play the system a little bit, but
Game recognizes game.
Oh, yeah.
I was very good at playing the system, checking the box. Okay, next question. Did you like school growing up, Anthony?
loved the social aspect, but the rest of it.
Not so much. How about you, Winston?
Hated it with a passion.
Hated it with a passion. Hey, at least you were passionate, right? I
exactly.
love that. At least you're passionate. How about you?
I wasn't a fan. I was more like a do-it-at-home engineering nerd.
You know, it's funny. I remember I would talk to teachers, especially in high school, and I'd be like, wait, you actually chose to do this job? Like, blew my mind the idea that someone would want to continue going to school every day. I'm like,
Welcome to the Future of Education podcast, hosted by MacKenzie Price. MacKenzie is the founder of a revolutionary new school model that's disrupting education through AI. Join us as we discuss the latest in education innovation.
we've been doing some After Dark episodes recently, lives, and this is Dad's After Dark, Future of Education. We are ready to go. I'm going to share a truth, and it may ruffle some feathers, but as a school founder, I've been working in schools now for 11 years, but even more from before when my kids were in traditional school. I can say this is a fact. Moms are simply more involved in education decisions of their kids than generally dads are. Not always, but mostly, yeah. Now, lots of reasons for that. You know, some good, some bad. This is not like trust me, we're not doing a marriage podcast here. Although I may ask a few questions. I'm gonna get the moms in at some point too. But what I want to do is I wanted to hear from dads. So I am so excited to be able to welcome some dads from our schools. We are going to talk all about dad's perspective on education. So I love all this male testosterone in the room because it's fun to hear from dads on education. So if you could each go, and I'd love for you to just introduce first name and how old your kids are and how long they've been going to Alpha School.
All right, nice to be invited here. Thank you. My name is Wim. My kid Armin, he's 10 years old, and he's been there from the beginning.
From the beginning?
Yeah.
So he started kindergarten there?
Yep.
Amazing. All right, that's been a while. So he's what grade now?
Fifth, sixth grade,
Yeah.
level 2, whatever.
That's
that
one of
is.
those things. Our school is a little weird. We go by levels. And so actually it's funny when my girls were first going to Alpha School and some stranger would be like, what grade are you in? And they kind of look at each other like, how do we answer that? And people are like, oh, is this a special school? And finally I was like, girls, you got to learn the grade and just say
Right.
that to the outward population.
Nah,
Well,
he's
thank
very
you.
special.
Thanks, Wim. Okay, how about you?
Hi, I'm Winston. I've got a 14-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl.
Amazing. And how long have they been at the school?
They've been at this school for 3 years.
3 years. Okay, great. And how about you? Who are you, buddy?
Anthony, and I have two girls here. One is 6 and the other is 10, and they are in L2 and LL, the kindergarten.
Amazing. Wonderful. So, and they've been at school since the beginning as
They
well.
have both been here from kindergarten.
Okay, so we definitely have like some old timers here in this school. Well, this is exciting. So, first question I want to ask you, before we get into your kids, were you a good student?
I think so, yeah. I was
You
not
were.
as good as my sister, but I was pretty good at
Were
it.
you a good student, Winston?
I was way too dyslexic to be good at school.
You were dyslexic,
Yeah,
so it was
so
hard.
I did okay, but again, dyslexic.
What about you, Anthony? Good student?
I learned how to play the system a little bit, but
Oh, yeah.
I think academics were strong.
Game recognizes game.
Oh, yeah.
I was very good at playing the system, checking the box, getting the grades, doing all that. Okay, next question. Did you like school growing up, Anthony?
Loved the social aspect, but the rest of it.
Not so much. How about you, Winston?
Hated it with a passion.
Hated it with a passion. Hey, at least you were passionate, right? I
exactly.
love that. At least you're passionate. How about you?
I wasn't a fan. I was more like a do-it-at-home engineering nerd.
Okay.
But I managed.
You know, it's funny. I remember I would talk to teachers, especially in high school, and I'd be like, wait, you actually chose to do this job? Like, blew my mind the idea that someone would want to continue going to school every day. I'm like, this is crazy. So, yeah, I was not a fan. It sounds like you guys really weren't huge fans either. It was not there. Yeah. That's a rough thing. Do you think that school prepared you well for, like, the real world, academically, life skills?
No.
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 Be honest now, Winston. This isn't going to go directly to your old school.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So no. How about you?
No, but let me put something to that. Like, I think that my school, I grew up in the Netherlands, right?
Okay.
So it's slightly different than this here, I'm sure. But I think school did a pretty good job at the academics. But I learned how to sell a piece of equipment or how to interact with people and stuff like that. I learned by having a job at a really young age instead.
Amazing.
That was my Saturday thing.
Yeah.
That's where I learned that. And even languages I learned by going around rather than academically.
So you got your experiences in the real world outside of school.
Yes. No, having said that, math and reading and stuff like that, I think school did a pretty good job.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's interesting. A lot of alternative education models, are like, don't worry about academics, just work on project-based, stuff. And I disagree with that. I'm like, you can absolutely crush core academics, and we should know core academics. Like, it's important to know math and reading and history and all those things, because in order to be a good critical thinker, you've got to have knowledge in your brain to draw upon, right? And we got to fill that in. And I think that's one of the mistakes that maybe alternative education has gone, is just like, get all your math experience from calculating net profit.
Right.
You want to be able to do both, right? What about you, Anthony? Did school prepare you well?
In ways.
Okay.
Learning how to play the system, allowed me to understand where I fit in and help manage a lot. So certainly can manage a lot of kind of operational perspective.
Okay,
But,
great.
Yeah, on the academic side, never was my deep strength. So.
Yeah. And Winston, I take it probably you don't feel like it helped you?
High school and then college, not so much, a little bit. And then I ended up at a MIT's think tank, because that was weird. But that's where I was able to apply a lot of the things. And so therefore, that's when it became
As you got
interesting.
more specialized.
Correct, yeah,
and found that
And
that thing
also
you were
we were
interested
doing
in.
some stuff with the military intelligence world. So it became real quick.
Yeah.
Like what
okay.
we were doing. Yeah.
So I just want one of you, you don't all have to do it, but I'm curious, one of you wants to take this. If somebody asks you, oh, where does your kid go to school? Tell me about it. What is like your 30-second summary of where your kid goes to school? Who wants to take it?
I'll do it.
Okay. All right, Winston. What is it?
I tell them Alpha, it's a little different school. It has a lot of computer base with a lot of data behind to help really dial in the model directly to their learning style, and then with a lot of life skills that we find super useful in the afternoon. I have no idea.
Okay, and
Does
then
that
do
work?
people look at you and they're like,
They look
huh?
at me like, yeah, I've
what?
got a third, head or
Now
something.
you learn how to explain it.
Correct.
Right? After you work through it, you get the same question 100
Exactly,
times.
a million times.
And you get good at it. after the end, like, I can take 30 seconds.
You can have to read the person too, and who you're speaking with. You're like, is this a tech forward kind of person? Like, I have a
Exactly.
very different response.
Yeah,
than-
what questions you get? What response do you get when you talk about like this different school that your kids are at?
Why?
Why? Really?
Yeah. I get like, why would you do that?
Why them?
Yeah, why would you do that? And I'm always like, why wouldn't we?
Yeah, so why did you? What is attractive about this school for your children?
It'll take 20 seconds to get there. So basically, when January told me Branson was told me she was pregnant, I was like, we cannot. Where we're going to end up with him in 20-something odd years is drastically different from where we are now. And who's bending that curve fastest? So we tried several alternative schools before we wound up here, and then really got there. So I was worried that the school system wasn't changing fast enough.
Okay, so you knew
We had
early
to go.
on, like, we got to find something
Yeah, we
different.
had to.
This traditional model is not where you wanted to raise
Yeah,
your kids.
and I also hated school, so
Right.
So
you knew
it helped.
differently. Yeah. What about you? What drew you to Alpha?
I had the good fortune of getting to know some kids that went through the Alpha experience, and I remember getting to see one of them. She was 10 years old, and she gave a speech in front of about 50 adults. And I walked away, looked straight to my wife, and was like, okay, this is different.
This is different.
I couldn't have done that when I was a college student, let alone a 10-year-old.
Much less 10 years
Yeah,
old.
absolutely.
Yeah. And actually, that brings up a good point. It just kind of top of your head, what's an experience you've seen your kid do at Alpha that you're just like, okay, this is why I send my kid here?
Yeah. So my oldest, she's 10, and this all started about 2 years ago, so 8, and she started her own jewelry business. Actually, rocking one of them. Right
I
here.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Very
That's
nice.
Very fashionable.
Yeah, you are.
Brings out my eyes. But she started this, and she was actually tasked to raise $1,000 from 10 different people, not family exclusively.
Yep. No family friends. Got to go out out in the public.
So she had to go out there, and she had to like pull together an elevator pitch and exactly what she was going to do with that money. And I was like,
and she's 8 years old.
she's 8 years old
That's
at this
awesome.
time,
That's so
and
fun.
she's now since gone to tons of fairs and vendor marketplaces around town, and she's actually made quite a bit of money, and she's just completely driven by it. So
She loves
cool.
her business.
She loves it.
And I actually remember talking to your wife about this because Anthony's wife had said, you know, my daughter came home and she's like, I got to raise $1,000 to reinvest into my business. And I had to come up and use AI to get feedback on how I'm going to reinvest. And my business plan was that, you know, I'm going to invest in better materials. I'm going to take a jewelry making class and I'm going to open an online store. And the wife was like, I don't know. I mean, can you really do this? Like all this and the idea of asking for money, you got to go pitch people. And her daughter looked at her and said, Mom, I got this.
Nice.
And Anthony's wife said, MacKenzie, I realized like I was putting my fears on my daughter and my daughter was like, don't worry, Mom, I can handle this.
It's so
and she
true.
said that was such a
That's
great
cool.
moment. It's one of my favorite stories.
so many parents, you know, we're projecting onto our kids, and like it's not just her. Like I was doing the exact same thing, and it's crazy how confident she is in her ability to do it, even when it's like completely beyond what I actually believe she can do at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's awesome.
So, Winston, I have really enjoyed getting to know your younger daughter. I don't know your older son very well, but your younger daughter I've gotten to spend quite a bit of time with. She's so cool.
Oh, thank you.
I love
Thank you.
all of our kids. They're all
Thank
so
you.
awesome. But what's something that was there a moment when you're like, okay, this is what the secret magic is of Alpha with your kids?
Yeah, a couple spots. One was the first year's end-up map score. So Alpha does, have you explained all this, the map scores?
All depends on if I've got like super fans listening or
Okay,
someone
all right.
random.
So
I don't know.
basically, they do testing 3 times a year and to kind of see how you're
Yeah, we
progressing.
do
and
map
then-
testing.
Right, and because you adjust your plan according, oh, hey, these are some holes, we've got to fill those, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically went up 25 percentage points in a year, really good, which just blew us away. And then the second one is she was extremely shy, and then at the end of her first year, she just stood up and gave like a little speech at the end of the year, and we were like, I don't know her. Like, I don't
yeah.
know who she is.
She's such a
Who's
great public
fantastic.
speaker,
Oh, thanks.
and she does. I mean, she's done some cool things. She's taken senators around on tours. She's had like some VIPs who've come around, and I'm always like, Shepherd, I can count on you. She's so great on that. Okay, how about you, Wim? You got any examples you can think of?
I think Armin's food truck experience, you know, when he had to run his own food truck and make money. I'm sure
That was
you're
cool.
familiar.
That was so cool.
I think I appreciate the entrepreneurial thing that Alpha injects in the kids, and they all get passionate about it. I think you gave the example. But the other thing is they're going through map testing right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And-
this week is a big map test week.
Exactly.
Big deal.
And, you know, Armin is deeply motivated by computer games and soccer and motorcycles in normal life. But somehow he's actually now passionate about doing well in his test.
Why do you think that is?
A sense of responsibility. I don't want to make it into an advertorial, so I'm going to
don't
blame
do that.
myself for that. You know, I think he's done well, but I think that he has a sense of responsibility that's grown into him because he's not sitting in a classroom with a teacher on a blackboard and, you know, the traditional way. I do believe that us making sure that he believes it's important makes a sense of that.
Of
But it's
course.
him that does it. And, you know, as he was going today, like his math score was 5 points below where I wanted to be. I was going like, you're a good kid. So I know I don't need to worry about it myself.
It is
Yeah.
amazing how much they beat themselves up over like incredible achievement, and then like I just map scores. It was earlier this week. Tate came home and she was like, I missed my goal by 10 points. I'm like, oh no. That doesn't sound good.
You're still in the 80
and then,
percentile, you
no,
okay?
no. And she goes, I was like, but what? Like, tell me more. And she was like, yeah, I only got a 90 percentile on the map scores.
Yeah,
I didn't get 99 percentile. I was like, Oh, okay.
Well, so just listening to that though, we're kind of laughing, but I think people would say like that's a criticism of the model. Like, should kids be stressed out about their MAP score? What do you think? Is that healthy? Is it
No, you
bad?
can unstress a kid much easier than.
That's true, right? Right. We'd rather
that's
someone
okay.
cares
It's a good
cares
problem.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could just also point, hey, where were you X number of times ago? Sure, you didn't quite get there, but you'll get there. Don't
Yeah.
worry about it.
I'd be lying if I didn't say that, at times as a parent, it has put me at a point of concern. And, I've been able to get online with one of the guides and talk through it all. And we created a great curriculum around it all. But, again, I'll just keep referencing my 10-year-old, but, she does put a very heavy burden on herself. And on one hand, it is awesome. But the double-edged side is, like, she is 10 years old. And sometimes I'm like, dude, you got to stop working. You need to go out and, like, kick a ball around. But it's all self-driven. She truly is the one pushing herself. It's not us. We sometimes pull her out of it.
I think I know your daughter, and I think if she were in a traditional school, she would be right up there at the top of the class playing the game. I don't think the apple falls far from the tree with knowing how to do well on that, and perfectionists are there. So I think that's true. One thing I always think is important when I talk to parents, I often get people just telling me, "Oh, things are great. It's wonderful. It's this. What's not working? What do we need to get better at?"
Well,
Crickets. Woo!
Perfect. 10 out
I'll
of
come up
10.
with something.
No,
don't worry.
seriously. What needs to get better?
All right, so this is not a criticism, but I think that Alpha fits to a certain set of kids.
Okay, what
that
kind of
are
kids?
focused on the entrepreneurial stuff and the achievements in math and reading, whereas I would understand it if a kid that just naturally trends towards purely sports or purely instruments, arts, whatever else, that they would just simply not fit as well. It fits a certain style. I don't think it's a universal solution to all problems.
Wim, I knew you were a smart guy because you know how we got other schools. We got our Texas Sports Academy for kids who are like really drawn to sports. And actually, we had that when we opened Texas Sports Academy. 2 of our students from Alpha were like, "Get me over to Sports Academy." Like, I love the idea of sports, and I would love to see a school. One of the things I think is really fun when I think about all the different school models we have that are based on our academics in the morning. What do you do in the afternoon? Is thinking like, what kind of school would I have wanted to go to? So I have my answer, but I'm curious, what would you do if you were designing a school where afternoons are life skills learning via whatever theme, and you do 2-hour learning in the morning? What kind of school would you go
What
to?
would I have done?
Yeah, what would you have
personally?
done?
Sports would have been up there.
Okay.
Kind of a interesting response, but something so around kind of like the social collaboration of projects, almost like a hackathon,
Okay.
but every afternoon. Like the idea of getting to
hacker
work
house.
with, hacker
Yeah.
house,
That'd be
something to
cool.
that
How
effect.
about you?
I frankly look a lot like Alpha, but a lot more, especially more on the high school side, where a ton more entrepreneurial stuff in the afternoon.
Entrepreneurial stuff, yeah. How about you, Wim?
I like the way it is. I'd open it for more kids. I think that it's fairly niche right now. I think to Armin and kids that we know around him, the model fits. So I would actually I would expand it, make it 10x better or bigger.
Bigger, yeah.
Even if that comes with less extravagant tours across the world and stuff like that.
Yeah, in fact, Gaston, one of y'all's guides, is now doing a charter school, and I picked his brain for about like an hour just because I was so fascinated.
Yeah.
And I've talked to him, like, at first he was like, "Oh my gosh, what are we getting into?" Then midway he was like, "Okay, we're making progress, but we got problems." And then talked to him, I guess, in March, and like he was really starting to see that. Anyway, it was fantastic because basically they took like some kids who were going down the wrong track and have really, no kidding, changed their lives. And that's where I'd love to see more and more of that. But again, harder and harder to explain
we're
that
doing
to the
it.
general public.
We're doing it. Don't worry. We're on
Okay.
the
I think
list.
it's fantastic.
Okay, do you guys want to know what kind of school I would have wanted to go
Please.
to when I was
Yeah,
young?
please.
a wilderness school, like where you're doing horseback riding and
That'd be cool.
camping and whitewater rafting and rock climbing and all that kind of stuff. Like, I think that would have been fun to do. So, that's the kind of idea, though, is that there's all these different ways you can learn life skills. And if you've got a kid who really wants a theme, I think I probably would have picked Alpha in general, because I don't know that I need to be like pioneer woman 100% of the time, but if I were going with a very specific theme, I would kind of do that. I
thought you were about to announce at that moment that Alpha's opening up a wilderness.
We actually are.
Yeah, Montana.
No, we are going to actually out in Dripping Springs. They're going to do one of our guides or teachers is actually working on that. He's doing a wilderness school, so I think it's going to be exciting. It'll be fun. So one of the things I kind of started out this podcast with was I was talking about how there's in general in schooling, education, it seems like there's kind of a lack of engagement from dads. Moms end up sort of often taking the driver's seat and being more that. And I feel like one of the things I think is so cool about our culture at our schools is there's so much more dad engagement than certainly at the traditional school that my kids were in before. Do you guys agree with me? Am I right or wrong on this? Oh yeah.
Big time.
Great. Why is that?
Frankly, I think one is just your demo, especially for the initial Alpha stuff as y'all were growing them. I mean, it attracts, you got to be a little different to put the two most important things in your life on the line here, like your kids and your money, right? It was those are the number one things here, and the kids being far more important, obviously. But you've got to think a little differently, and you also want a lot of feedback, okay, how's this going? Because you're out there. You got to check it out. Anyway, I think that's it. And
so
also, I like the people.
You think the fact that people are self-selecting into this school just means there's the mom and dad probably both are a little more checked into what's going on?
I think initially, yes. And then as it gets a little further along, then frankly checks back. But also, I would argue that the type, especially initially and now that it's broadening out, it changes a little bit. I would argue it's a self-selecting group, but also it's, again, folks who just don't agree that the other systems are working well, because you're willing to take a pretty big risk, especially a couple of years ago, to take this path first, the traditional path, and hey, you should all do that. Because I don't know about y'all, but I've got all the grandparents, all the aunts and uncles. Are you sure you're doing this to your kids right? Are you sure this is the right path?
Actually, disagree with you, Dad. I got a different response.
Yeah, shoot.
My mom from the other side of the world, she's going all in. She saw that YouTube video from the German channel.
Oh yeah.
That was a really good explanation, and she passed that video along her friends, and that settled the score.
Wow, maybe that's where I'm getting my European following is from your family.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
That video
thank
did
you,
the job.
Wim's family, for being my European
it's
audience.
all my mom.
Yeah, I'm glad she's sharing.
Nice.
Yeah, keep sharing those stories. Keep sharing those posts.
I think from kind of the perspective of money and children, although that is certainly a high priority. I mean, the private schools, here in town, they're St. Stephen's. I grew up in Austin, and I still think that predominantly it was probably still the mothers driving the education in those circumstances. It could be wrong, but the difference for me is I think it is kind of that last point you're getting at, where it does breed a different type of parent that is trying to push limits and boundaries. And I talk to mothers and fathers alike here at the school, but everybody here is almost just kind of interested and curious. It's like curious people.
Thanks for listening to MacKenzie Price and the Future of Education podcast. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, now is the time to do it, so you can stay up to date on all our episodes. You can connect with MacKenzie on social media and be part of our daily conversation over on Instagram at futureof_education. For more info about the show and our guests, you can always visit futureofeducationpod.com. Lastly, if you're loving what you're learning, please leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll be back in your feed soon, but until then, remember, kids are limitless, and it's our job to unlock their potential. That wraps up part 1 of this episode, but don't worry, there's a part 2 coming soon.